Wow, right? I even got entry music. Isn't that great? I thought you'd think so too. Well, welcome to Biology in the Basement. We're going hat collection now. I've run out of shirts and suspendered items and Punisher aprons to wear, so I guess we'll show off my hat collection. So, the purpose of this video is to move on from digestion and respiration and see how the circulatory system takes over. So we're going to pick up here and start talking about circulation. So let's have a fact of the day so that we can get started. And that is the most tattooed nation in the world is Italy. Surprisingly enough, 48% of Italians report of having at least one tattoo. Well, maybe they're not of the same belief as me, who thinks that you don't put bumper stickers on a Ferrari, just like you don't put tattoos on a work of art like this guy right here. Yeah, I know. It's hilarious. So, anyways, let's get started talking about circulation, right? As we focus at the small intestine, this is where the nutrients diffuse into the bloodstream, right? The rest of the food just passes through you, technically undigested, and it is egested. Technically, we don't excrete here. We do what is called egestion, right? Removal of undigested materials. We also looked at this side where we get the oxygen into the blood. And the heart's job is to take these two nutrients, oxygen, right, plus glucose, proteins that have been turned into amino acids, monosaccharides from polysaccharides, as well as our small lipid droplets, right? They get to all enter into the bloodstream, and then we get them to the cells, right? Because we've got to maintain homeostasis. So, this is what the circulatory system does. Its function is to deliver nutrients, gases. We'll talk about hormones, as well as other needed materials to all cells of the body. As well, the waste products are also diffusing into the bloodstream at the same time, where we can remove them. And that will be the next step. After we get through circulation, we'll start to talk about the excretory system. We'll look at the kidneys. We'll revisit the lungs again as well. So, when we talk about what is the circulatory system, you should obviously know this, especially after our projects. We've got a heart in the center pumping blood through blood vessels. I've never personally liked the name blood vessels because it just makes me think of little like vessels of like ships, like little. I don't have little boats like traveling through my bodies, or when I think of vessels. I used to just say blood tubes a lot of the times when we would be in lecture, because that's what it is. It's a network of tubes. One of the things you were looking at, right, was a closed circulatory system, meaning the blood is enclosed, traveling through these tubes, and the heart's job is to pump them throughout the body. Quick note, now that you are luckily products of good 7th grade teachers, right, you've all been taught that your blood is red. Always red. Your blood is always red. We do have blue and red in our diagrams. That's only to show which parts of the blood is coming from the heart, arterial blood, going to the cells of the body. And then we have venous blood, which is blood coming back from the cells, okay? But your blood is red. It's always red. It's never blue. I don't know who told you that, but it's a tough one to dispel. Your blood is red, always. Of course, at the center is your heart. Your heart is a muscle. It will be revisited when we talk about cardiac muscle. Down here, mainly, you have muscles that are pushing. Of course, as they relax, they just naturally suck blood back in. So they're sucking blood and pumping in just one contraction. It's a very interesting process. We have two parts of our heart split into four chambers, right? The top part are your atria, the bottom parts are your ventricles, and they are kept separated by the septum in the middle and by valves at each side. Tricuspid just means there's three flaps, and bicuspid, or what is it, mitral valve, right? They just have two flaps. So anyways, that's how we separate our chambers of our heart. Okay, now I put this slide in here to revisit some of your work, maybe to kind of remind us how this all works and why mammals and birds have such a benefit, right? We have a four-chambered heart, right? These valves are important, but the real game changer here is this septum. The septum is what keeps this freshly oxygenated blood separate from the blood that just came back from your cells that is very low in oxygen and high in CO2. And so as you can see, this red blood is like high test, high octane blood, giving us the ability to have lots of oxygen and create enough energy to maintain our own body temperature. As you can see with these guys, the blood that is coming from their cells and the blood that is coming from their lungs or gills or whatever is dumping into the same chamber, essentially diluting its oxygen content. And so this happens in three-chambered, even with a little bit of a break. Two-chambered hearts, same scenario, the blood just mixes. And so this is really why we have the ability to maintain our own body temperature, right? We are endothermic, where we can keep that temperature within, where these guys are ectothermic, where they are reliant on the outside temperature because they can't get enough oxygen to their cells to generate enough heat through cell respiration. So that's really why it's called warm-blooded and cold-blooded, even though many of the other species past the amphibian don't really have quote-unquote blood. So we've got two types of circulation. Your blood moves from the heart, travels to the lungs, picks up oxygen, comes right back to the heart, and that is what we call pulmonary circulation, where blood is just picking up oxygen, delivering CO2 that it has, and making that exchange. We call that external respiration, right? And then the next step is it goes back to the heart and leaves out the aorta, this big guy here, and goes to the top half and bottom half, delivering this freshly oxygenated blood, coming back through what we call vena cavas. Superior is from the top half, inferior is from the bottom half, and then the heart takes that, quote-unquote dirty blood or low O2, high CO2 blood and ships it back to the lungs to start this process over again. So what we're really looking at is two different sets of circulation, right? That first one, as I mentioned, going to the lungs and back is called pulmonary, and then when we're delivering our nutrients to the cells, that is called systemic, because we're reaching all the systems and parts of the body that need blood, and then it comes back and more blood goes to the systems, and then it comes back. So those are our two main types of circulation. It does this through different types of blood tubes, right, or blood vessels. Arteries are the ones that are traveling away from your heart. That's how we remember them. Arteries travel away. We also have veins. They're the ones that carry blood back to the heart. And so, no, they're not blue and red blooded. They are just used, those colors to represent which type of blood tube or blood vessel you're talking about. Okay, so those are the two main tubes of the body: arteries traveling away from the heart, and veins bringing blood back to the heart. But once these guys branch off the main highway and then into the smaller roads and then into the driveways of your blood system, then we have the capillaries. This is where we drop off our nutrients and we pick up our waste products. This is where that internal respiration takes place, as well as other nutrient exchanges. So here are your blood vessels, right? Arteries are thick walled because they have the force of the heart behind it. One of my facts of the day used to be, if someone was able to saw open my sternum, open my chest out, and just snip my heart at the aorta, the blood would squirt out and hit the wall. Like 30 feet is the distance. Very, very strong muscle, a lot of force. And so they are thick-walled. But the blood that's coming back doesn't have the force of the heart behind it. It is moving kind of slow. So this is where we're going to see valves to stop the backflow of blood so we don't get clotting internally. As well, this is where you're going to see more of that good old peristalsis taking place, like in the esophagus that we revisited. I don't know if anybody remembered this guy, but he was a great demo tool, so we like to give it up to him. But that is happening here as well in your veins. Here is that first exchange, right? Getting the oxygen into the bloodstream and the CO2 out, the external respiration. Here is where we have that internal respiration, where the oxygen is diffusing in and the CO2 is diffusing out, just because, right? We have a high concentration here and a low concentration here, so it diffuses in. And the opposite is also true, where there's a low concentration of CO2. Your cells are full of CO2. They've been making energy all day, so that diffuses in. But that's not the only thing that happens at the capillaries. We've also got other things, right? We've digested our nutrients, like our amino acids from proteins. We've got our monosaccharides in there, oxygen, water. All of our nutrients are making in as well. And so here's where our waste, our nitrogenous waste, carbon dioxide, are diffusing out. And so that is the big exchange. And this is how the circulatory system in the big picture takes our food, takes our oxygen, and gets it to cells, as well as we'll focus more on the excretory side, getting the carbon dioxide out. This I put in here because this just shows a bruise. This is what happens when your blood travels outside of your blood vessels, right? If you get a strong, blunt force trauma, right, as it's called, where blood vessels are broken underneath the surface of the skin, you didn't receive a laceration, right, where the skin has been cut or broken, but blood vessels underneath have been broken. And so blood is now traveling outside of the tubes, so to speak. And so until all your lysosomes and white blood cells and stuff like that can digest that stuff down and clean up the mess, you have a bruise. So that's what that is. And so we'll stop there. We're going to pick up with blood, and that will set you up for your first real at-home lab. It's just, counting and filling things out, but you get to perform a diagnosis, which is fun. So I will set you guys up with that the next time we meet. So what you should be working on is the big question after that lecture, right? If we go to our documents here, let's see. We'll leave the documents or the objectives off. Let's have you guys do. We're going to skip that one review page, 157. Once you learn a little bit more, we'll get to that. Okay, 159 to just 161. H159 to 161, and I'll post those numbers along with the stuff on Google Classroom. So, thanks for hanging in there with me. I hope that you guys are all doing well. This is going to be one of those tough weeks, but if we all keep our social distance and stick together and do our part, I think that we're going to see some light at the end of the tunnel real soon. So I'm thinking about you. Miss you guys. Hope all is well. Signing off.